I've kept myself alive for one reason.
Morality. Morality never changes. What's up, all my wasteland, wandering frangulums? Tegan, the only Fallout review channel that survived radiation poisoning, corporate betrayal, and Amazon Prime's release schedule.
I guess not.
Today, I'm talking about Fallout Season 2, Episode 6. An episode where everyone reveals a secret. Vault-Tec somehow gets worse, and the show once again reminds us that capitalism caused the apocalypse.
Well, duh.
The overarching theme of the entire Fallout series, the theme of morality, and this episode had that in spades, and it also had a cameo that we all knew was going to happen eventually. It was only a matter of time. But before I get into that little Easter egg, don't forget to take a moment, take out your Pip-Boy, click that subscribe button, click that like, click the share, and click the little alert thingy. It really helps a brother out, and it goes a long way. So let's dive in to episode 6 of Fallout Season 2. Barb is forced to sit through corporate meetings where these lackeys are trying to talk to her about what would happen if they actually did drop the bombs, as finally the return from the end of season 1 where Barb suggests they actually drop the bombs themselves. Cooper hears this, his heart drops out of his body. Of course, the questions, who did I marry? Is my wife a monster? Was she always a monster? Just like Hank, was he always a monster? Or was he just playing along all this time? Pivotal episode packed with moral dilemmas, shocking revelations, and character development across multiple storylines. Episode 6 is basically the equivalent of, okay, cards on the table. Lucy continues her slow transformation from wide-eyed vault optimist to, I'll absolutely shoot you if you quote a Vault-Tec policy again. As she wakes up and walks through Vault-Tec, she finds that there are all these automatons that Hank somehow single-handedly has created an army of automatons in a very short period of time. Everything appears chronologically in the same amount of time, yet somehow Hank has created this huge army of automatons with all these little devices on the back of their neck. How long was Lucy out? One of those plot holes of he did that somehow, but they're not going to tell us.
What do I find out?
He's used this mind control technology to transform violent wastelanders into docile, productive workers. He managed to do this on his own.
My dear Lord.
One of the wasteland raiders that had the Ghoul hung up on a rope is a guy named Nick the Prick. Hair is cut and he's all nice and docile and compliant. Did Hank go all the way to Novak, or did he find Nick the Prick somewhere else? How the hell Hank managed to cover all his area in a short period of time, creating this big army, pretty much recreated their own vault in here. And when Lucy comes in to see him for the very first time, Ella Purnell has this amazing acting moment where in the span of half a second, she has about 20 different facial expressions. She sees her dad for the first time after a while, and then she actually smiles for a little bit. Then she immediately goes from smiling to worried to sad to anger. She expresses an incredible amount of emotion in the span of about a second, which is something about acting that always impressed me, of how actors are able to say so much with just an expression. Acting! Lucy, she's so dedicated to justice, even though he got kidnapped. How Lucy is actually still planning on pulling this off, I don't know. Get all the way back to wherever the vault is, where at this point, that's miles away, as in they're now in New Vegas. As someone who's so anally retentive when it comes to continuity and plot holes, I notice things like this all the time. I'm so invested into this show, I don't want it to end because it's such a good stinking show and it makes me so happy. I would love to hear opinions from people who don't know the games. Hank presents his vision as a utopian solution to the endless conflict, forcing Lucy to make the harrowing choice later in the episode. The morality comes up once again. Hank did kill a lot of people in Shady Sands, but he did it to basically try to end the constant conflict. They did it to protect Lucy in the first place. Is it right or is it wrong? He did this to protect his family. He did this to end the conflict, but he also killed a whole bunch of people doing it. And you can see a part of Lucy is listening to that idea and saying they actually do have a point, but the way they're going about it is definitely not the right way. After being impaled in the previous episode, the ghoul has just been hanging there off this pole and no one wants to help him, so he's slowly turning into the feral part of the ghoul. He can't reach his vials, which is just jet. Though I don't recall in the games something that you could use to get rid of ghouls. It was more of a thing that would give you a little powerful short-term combat benefits. Fallout 2, it enhances strength perception and gets some bonus AP points. Fallout 3 in New Vegas, it increases maximum action points for 4 minutes. Fallout 4, it slows time. Almost seems unnecessary because you can just use VATS.
Vault-Tec assisted targeting system.
But the drug doesn't cure ghoulification or reverse its physical effects. Is it actually jet? Do they just happen to use a device that looks like jet? Clips that they use directly from the game that I've heard a gazillion, million, trillion times of a ghoul coming awake, or a ghoul seeing you and coming at you with that very familiar sound that you hear all the time. Sometimes you hear it and don't see it, or sometimes you walk into an area and a bunch of ghouls were lying down and then they suddenly stand up and come at you. Thaddeus and Maximus, they're just roaming. Thaddeus had to drop his armor because they could track him with that, but we get to see the further development of the relationship between Thaddeus and Maximus, which was a little contentious in the first season. I think it's safe to say that they're officially friends.
Earning the trust of your fellow man is an often overlooked key to survival.
This episode leans hard into the False core obsession of morality, control, and obedience, and what happens when institutions outlive their purpose. There's many moments where characters try to justify doing something horrific using the Vault-Tec logic. And if you've ever read a terminal entry in a Fallout game, you immediately went, yeah, this is how everyone died. But the real chef's kiss is how both sides actually have a point. Both sides are right and both sides are wrong. Reg's extravagant snack parties for the inbreeding support group. Betty attempts to shut down Reg's parties, but he defies her, sparking a rebellion against her, and again, they both have good points. Betty is saying, all right, you're using way too many resources and we need to ration all of this stuff, which totally makes sense. They're in underground and they don't want to run out of water and food. And Reg is having these crazy parties, which he basically just does to make him feel good about himself. Even though they're wasting resources, good for the people's morale, increasing their level of positivity and whatnot. Betty's right about the resources, but she's also wrong in terms of trying to shut down something that's helping people. And Reg has a point as he's trying to help people, but he's also using up all these resources. Is Betty right? She is. Is Barb right on some level? Sure. Is Hank right on some level? Sure.
Following total atomic annihilation,
Chet discovers he's been forced into a shotgun wedding with Steph he didn't even know about, and Woody has suddenly gone missing after approaching Steph about her mysterious meetings. So he's been kidnapped by someone somewhere, and I guess Steph has him held up somewhere because Steph's gone completely out of her mind already. Barb is not happy with her past decisions and the true origins of Vault-Tec's plan. She is shown making some agonizing decisions, accepting the fact that there's a 30% failure rate on water chips. And essentially, they're going to ask her to decide, okay, which vaults are going to get the shittier chips? As in, which vaults do you think should die of dehydration earlier? So she's given all these really nasty, awful decisions, dropping bombs on a bunch of people. About it. Cooper finally confronts Barb about everything he heard. The same question that I always had was you always a monster, or did you become one later on down the road after we got married? And Barb is still trying to justify it, but in the same way, she doesn't feel good about it. Earlier in the season, there is a scene where Cooper is at home making supper and Barb comes in quietly. There's this awkward moment with her before she walks in. It was still unclear to me because at that time, Cooper knew what she was up to, but she didn't know that he knew. So he had this look on his face like, I can't really face her right now. But Barb has the same expression, but at that point, I wasn't really sure what that meant in terms of her feelings towards Cooper, because she doesn't know that he knows yet. Maybe she was just finally starting to feel bad about what was happening. The ghoul is still hanging on this pole being impaled, and suddenly he finally decides to try to pull himself all the way up off the pole. Why didn't you do that sooner when you were less feral and you still had your faculties? but a large figure that we saw in the trailers, even though they didn't give him a name. A mysterious large creature just straight up picks him up. As he's being dragged into this community, we see one of those familiar, gigantic, hanging balls of meat from many of the games that are just hanging from walls. As someone who looks in every single stinking nook and cranny of these games, usually you can get caps from these bags of meat. We knew it was a super mutant right away. We didn't immediately see his face, but I immediately knew who the voice was. And yes, of course, it's Mr. Ron Perlman, the guy from all the games who says that iconic line that I don't even need to repeat. In the very first recording for the first game, and nobody had a clue it was going to blow up, they paid him in a sandwich and maybe a couple of dollars just to say those lines and to read the opening scroll of the games. But here we get the reveal of the face. And I knew it was Ron Perlman, even though the credits don't officially even say it's Ron Perlman. Even in the face of the mutant up close, you can see the Ron Perlman features. And I could hear a little bit of Perlman. Voice is obviously altered to be deeper.
There's a war coming.
War never changes.
Even in the trailers, when I would hear the voice, I knew immediately that's definitely a super mutant and it's definitely Ron Perlman. And I was 100% right. How I knew that, other than the fact that I'm just a stinking genius. But I knew that Perlman was going to be somewhere in this season. He wasn't in last season, unless he was so very secretly that even a dork like me didn't see it. So the mutant heals him with uranium, mentions something about getting him ready for a war, revealing that there's a war brewing between the Enclave and a faction opposed to them. The Enclave is a secretive faction that's appeared in many of the games as an antagonistic force. They were in Fallout 2 and 3, and the mutant reveals that there's a war brewing between the Enclave and a faction opposed to them. For some reason, he thinks the Ghoul needs to be involved. It was first mentioned in Season 1. Dr. Siggy Wilzig defects from the organization and sets the first season plots in motion when he steals the cold fusion. So the Doctor from the first season comes back around in multiple ways. Siggy Wilzig, he's a former scientist for the Enclave before his defection to associate with Lee Moldaver. He was just sent to Vault-Tec and is somehow just walking around the building and just happens to be in an elevator at the same time Barb is. So was he just waiting around in elevators all day, hoping that Barb would finally just show up? The Doctor itself is essentially just the voice of reason throughout the entire series. He almost, in a way, represents the morality that we constantly talk about. The Doctor says what we already know out loud, but his short little speech in the elevator seemed to be enough to influence Barb into finally going against everything that she's been deciding up until now. So this episode confirms all along that Vault-Tec was coerced by the Enclave. So the other player in this episode is the Enclave, who's always been in the background, pulling the strings. The Ghoul's not just comic relief anymore. He's the walking embodiment of Fallout's thesis. Survive long enough and the world doesn't break you. You adapt. It also continues with Maximus's identity crisis with the Brotherhood of Steel. Are they protectors? Are they hoarders? Or are they just cosplay authoritarians? Maximus is clearly realizing that being chosen doesn't mean being right, and that's a very Fallout thing. If you ever sided with the Brotherhood and immediately regretted it, yeah, same energy.
You will be faced with many post-nuclear nuisances.
Lucy is leading Hank to the facility with nothing but a pair of scissors, and Hank is going along with it, but he just kind of seems like, this isn't going to work out, or I'm going to be able to talk you out of it, or you're my daughter, you're finally going to change your mind. Lucy tells everyone they're free now, but they don't want to leave because they're safe. One of them even saying,
Do we have to?
You can just stay here, right? Hank says that they can stay as long as they like, but the doors will be open. Then the snake oil salesman brings in Biff and a legionary who has not been brainwashed yet. Biff being Uncle Rico, who we saw an episode or two ago, who's a member of the New California Republic. And the NCR and the legionary do not like each other. They're both tied to chairs and they're trying to fight each other. Hank says all they need to do is press the button and they will be placated. The little brain devices are already on the back of their necks, they just haven't been activated yet. But Lucy says, don't do that. You can't control people like that. The legionary breaks free and begins trying to attack Biff. Lucy tries to defend him as Hank says this is the type of violence he's trying to avoid in the world. Reluctantly, Lucy presses the button and it ends everything, and suddenly they're both besties, helping each other up and walking away, having a nice, friendly chat. And then Hank looks at her and says, "See? What I did was effed up, but at the end of the day, they stopped fighting each other, and that's my overall goal. My overall goal is to stop people from fighting each other and all just trying to live in harmony." And that's a good point. He is right. The way he's going about it is wrong, but he has a good point. And you can tell on Lucy's face that she can't really argue with that point. Last episode, Cooper got wasted and partied it up, and then he ends up passed out in the room. He goes downstairs and Hank is still sitting at the bar, so if Hank's been sitting there drinking this whole time, he should be absolutely sloshed. Cooper brings him up to the room, but then we have this really great reversal reveal where after Cooper drugs him and he passes out, he opens the briefcase handcuffed to Hank's arm, which wasn't locked at all. So he has this briefcase cuffed to his arm, but they didn't even have it locked properly. Even if it's all just for show, why wasn't it still just locked? But he finds the strange injector that we recognize from season 1. He doesn't know what it is, but then Barb comes in and knows what it is, and then sticks it in Hank's neck. And we're looking at it and we're wondering, okay, she's about to inject cold fusion into Hank, but no, it ended up being removed from Hank's neck. This entire time, Hank had the cold fusion in his neck. How that even works, I don't know. Okay, did he actually know it was in his neck the whole time? Did he know that the briefcase was empty? Why did they exactly decide to do it that way? Well, I guess they're aware that everybody wants the cold fusion, as it seems to be the thing that everybody in the entire series just wants. Everything always comes back to the cold fusion. Barb extracts the cold fusion from his neck into this small device.
Hey!
Dogmeat brings the Ghoul's hat to Maximus and Thaddeus, and they follow him to find him at the Mojave mission, where the mutant just left him lying there all bloodied. So this is somewhat of a reunion, even though in season 1 we're in a scene together, but they didn't even really talk. So there was only kind of one quick little moment where they're in a scene together. Thaddeus was never there, so this is the first time Thaddeus meeting the Ghoul, and he's kind of almost excited in a way. He's like, hey, someone like me. But I guess he's also looking at him and thinking, okay, is that what's going to happen to me? I mean, how far along is Thaddeus going to go in terms of turning into a Ghoul?
Seen a lot of things, like crazy things.
Episode 6 is another spectacular Fallout at its most Fallout. Dark humor, moral ambiguity, the lore that reminds longtime fans without gatekeeping newcomers. It doesn't just move the plot forward, it deepens the world, sharpens the themes, and reminds us the bombs didn't end the world. It's the people that pressed the button. And it's kind of beautiful, but in a very deeply messed up way. If you enjoy my review of episode 6 of Fallout Season 2, give that like button a little tickle, like it's that critical. Subscribe for more Fallout Easter eggs, breakdowns, and wasteland nonsense. And let me know in the comments, who do you trust even less after episode 6? Vault-Tec, Brotherhood, Enclave, Barb, your mom, the Ghoul,
A few moments later.
the dog, Maximus, Thaddeus, Lucius, Hankius?
Get on with it, man!
Ultimately, the answer is still Vault-Tec. It's always Vault-Tec. But now we know that it's not just Vault-Tec, it's the Enclave. Thanks for watching my review. See you in the wasteland. Keep gaming. Tegan out.